Hey, what's up everyone? Tankenstein here. In this video, I'll be giving a somewhat quick overview of the biggest things coming to War Thunder in the major direct hit update. And then I'll be giving an analysis of those things and finally classifying what I think are the good, the bad, and the neutral parts of this update. So there will be quite a bit in this video, but I'll try to condense it down to the most important parts of the update. So please like, comment, subscribe, you know the dealio, and well, let's get into the video. So first, and probably about my favorite thing with this update, at least insofar as the less obvious things are concerned, it's the sound. So the new sounds are great. They are very meaty, really lifelike. Gaijin did a great job, especially with the cannons and just various armaments. It seems like almost every update since 1.91 that Gaijin has really felt that it's been imperative to change or update the sounds in-game. Now, I'm not sure if they're adding more layers to the sounds or just changing them entirely, though it does definitely sound like they're changing them entirely, but the cannons sound better in the coming patch than they do now, and better than they did 1 or 2 years ago. Add this to the other sounds and what went from a relatively average to slightly above average game for this genre in terms of sound, increasingly sounding more crisp and is incredibly immersive. Again, at least insofar as sound is concerned. So nice job, Gaijin. Now, though everyone certainly notices the sound improvements, I feel that they slip a little bit under the radar sometimes due to higher profile things coming to the game, such as top tier jets. Now, it's these improvements in sound, however, that are part of what people have been calling for such a long time. Overall, foundational improvements in the game that really bring about immersion. You can add planes, tanks, ships, or whatever, and the game will still feel relatively the same. But if you change how everything feels by upgrading the sound and maybe some other foundational elements, it makes the game more enjoyable and immersive. I mean, what difference does it make after all in playing an F4C when that was first released, only to get the F4E an update or two later? They feel about the same, albeit with the E being more capable, of course. The only thing is that enemy fighters will also be more capable as well, so it's kind of a wash. If you improve how they feel, however, whether through flight models or sound, then you're totally upgrading how the game interacts with the player, which is easily a bigger win than if you add a new vehicle that will inevitably be matched by any enemy vehicle in probably the same update, if not the next update. Heck, even the Phantoms now have their own unique sounds. How cool is that? And also, even cooler than that, ground vehicles will now sound totally different depending on what terrain you're on. So whether it's mud, different types of mud have different sounds, snow, water, gravel, road, desert, sand, whatever the case may be, ice, it all sounds totally unique now. It's not just one blanket sound or kind of all very similar. It's totally unique. Test it out in the test drive once the update's out. Seriously, it is a blast. This game is now one of the games where you want to wear a nice headset. It is that good. Good job, Gaijin. Now, for the second big thing coming to the game, obviously it's all the vehicles. Now, it's not just the brand new vehicles, but rather also the updated vehicles, which is really cool. I like that Gaijin's going back and kind of updating things. So I'll just kind of start with the biggest, or at least in my opinion, the coolest vehicles coming to the game. Now, let's start, and to start, I'll go over the US, and the US only has one plane coming to the game in this update, but it is the F-8E, which is a huge upgrade over the F-8U2, at least insofar as strike capability is concerned. So while it's largely the same aircraft, at least in terms of airframe, it now has dozens more loadout options, and they're almost all geared towards anti-ground, so close air support capabilities. Not that the US really needed it, but it is another arsenal, especially if you do not have your the A7D, for example, research. So it is really, really cool. It's not the greatest close air support plane in the game, but it is definitely a very cool thing to be added to the game. Now, second, we have B-17. So the E, the EL, and the G60VE all have updated models. So I think that's really cool. Germany, seriously, when I say this, go check it out. Ash has a great video on this vehicle, the BV138C1. He did a phenomenal job. I remember actually watching his video and just saying, wow, I really want to get this vehicle now. So the BV138 is I believe it's a rank 1.7 or a BR 1.7 rank 1 seaplane for the Germans. It's very slow. It's like less than 300 kilometer per hour top speed, but it can carry 6 50 or 60 kilogram bombs, and it has 2 MG151 turrets and also a 13 millimeter turret as well. So it's a really, really well defended vehicle, incredibly slow, but it's great. It looks amazing. So good job, Gaijin, with that. We're also getting obviously the MiG-27M, the Shackleton MR2, which is pretty cool, although that will be annihilated the moment it gets into a match. The B-17E for Japan's getting an updated model. We're getting the A5C for China, which is a pack premium. For Italy, we're getting the F104G, which it's basically just the same plane that's already in game. It's just the G version. We're getting France with the F8E, their own version. It does perform, I think, a little bit better in the air. However, it does not have as good of an ordnance loadout. And finally, the plane or the country that's getting the most vehicles for air, Sweden. Who would have thought? We're getting the JA-37 Viggen and the J-35A Draken, which is a pack premium. So it's really, really cool. Awesome, awesome vehicles. I think that the ground vehicles are a little bit less awesome in my opinion, although the M1A1HC for the US is amazing. It's got almost 600 millimeters of armor pen with its top tier APF-SDS shell. So really, really, really powerful. I used it in the test server. Rarely did I not pen an enemy. Germany gets the Marder at 1A3. USSR gets the light tank, the 2S25 Sprut D, which is a really cool vehicle in my opinion. It has a very long reload. However, it is a light tank with a 125 millimeter cannon at 9.7 BR. Long reload, no thermals. Pretty fast, not the fastest. It's going to be a very divisive tank. A lot of people are going to love it. A lot of people are going to hate it. Great Britain gets the Vickers Mark III, which is itself an upgrade on the Vickers MBT already in game. Japan gets a bunch of new tanks. So really, Gaijin's going all out for the relatively small-ish countries in game. Even though Japan's more of a medium-sized country, they're definitely not one of the big three. Or if you want to consider Great Britain to be one of it, the big four. So Japan's getting the Type 74C, the Type 87 RCV, which is like a scout recon tank that's got an autocannon, the M16 and the M19A1. China's getting the ZTZ-99-3, which is a 10.7 BR main battle tank. It's very, very powerful. It's not incredibly good at any one thing, but it can get the job done. Italy's getting the C-1390 and Sweden's getting the PVP-301, which is a really weird tank. Pretty much just going to act as an SPAA, maybe a light tank destroyer if you can flank. It's just an odd vehicle. I suggest you check it out. Helicopters, we're getting the squadron vehicle YAH-64. We are getting really just a bunch of detailed cockpits, and that's really it. There's only one helicopter coming to the game in this patch. Again, the YAH-64, and it's a squadron vehicle of all things. So you can buy it with GE. I wouldn't do that if I were you, just because if you buy a helicopter with GE and it's your first helicopter, you will not have any idea what you're doing. I actually released a gameplay video of the YAH-64, and I've got hours in helicopters, and even I look like a fool flying it. So trust me, you're going to want to test it out before you just go ahead and jump in it thinking that you're going to get a huge advantage in top tier with your XM1 because you're a wallet warrior. Trust me, just try it out first, really get used to it before really dedicating yourself to buying it, but hopefully just research it. Finally, we have a bunch of new vehicles for Naval. Really, really cool. I hope that Naval gets better. I know a lot of people are going to be going towards Naval if it has more famous vehicles like the Bismarck, the Iowa, Alaska class I've seen, the Roma, the Yamato, for example. I mean, everyone wants the Yamato. I don't know how that's going to be in game, but people want that vehicle. So really just a lot of famous vehicles people want, but we are inching our way towards that. So for the U.S., we're getting the USS Pittsburgh, which is a heavy cruiser, pretty much just a D. It's pretty much the Baltimore class without as much AA armament. For Germany, we have the M17 and the Karlsruhe. For USSR, we have the Smelly, which is a premium, and Karlsruhe is a premium as well. We also have the Perovskaya Kommuna, which is a 6.0 BR battleship, very powerful. Great Britain, we have the HMS Vega, which will be replacing the Churchill. After this update comes, the Churchill will no longer be available in the regular tech tree, so get it now. We'll have the Leorla, which is an Irish coastal vessel premium. We have the Fairmeal HLCS, which is a really weird vehicle. The HMS Norfolk. I mean, really, most of these vehicles to most people are just like, oh, this is the same as the last one. You know, it all feels pretty similar to each other, and albeit that's true, you know, I mean, really, there's not a ton of development, you know, or a ton of difference between a 4.3 and a 4.7 destroyer for the most part, or a 4.7 and a 5.0, kind of like there might be in planes or tanks. Just Naval's a much different advancement system, at least insofar as how they're developed. And finally, Italy has the RN Gabbiano and the RN Leon. Now, we have also two new missions. So we have Operation Honolulu, which is an alternate history mission, and that's an aircraft mission. We also have a ground battle for Spaceport, which is the April Fool's 2021 map, basically, for tanks. Really cool map. I like it a lot. It'll be interesting to see how it plays in game. There's also a ton of different things. Ground models are being changed dramatically. That is incredibly important. I'll go over that in just a few moments. And, you know, really, it's just a ton of different things. A lot of game improvements, foundational improvements. We're not getting as many vehicles with this update, of course. We're only getting like 1-2 per country. However, we are getting, when I say per country, I mean per tech tree per country. So air, ground, naval, maybe helicopters if you're the US. We're not getting a ton of vehicles, but we're getting a ton of improvement in game, and I think that is more important than vehicles. Of course, you want to get new vehicles, but if the game is better, I'm more happy because of that. Okay, so with all that out of the way, let's kind of do the good, the neutral, and the ugly, so to speak. So what I think are the best parts about this patch, this update, the parts, and also the worst parts, the things that might come back and hurt the game in the long run. So for the good, I mentioned it before, was the first thing I mentioned, updated and upgraded sound. Seriously, that is one of the best parts about this patch. If you have not heard what Guide or what War Thunder sounded like 4 years ago, listen to how it compares with this update. Seriously, even in our current game, right as I'm recording this, it is still substantially better than a few years ago, so great job, Gaijin. Second, this update seems to be much more focused on the game rather than adding vehicles to it. Now, I've noticed a trend in the most recent updates, like the last 2 or 3, where there are fewer vehicles that were added in the most recent 2 or 3 updates compared to the 2 or 3 prior to those. So there are fewer vehicles being added per update, and there's kind of a trend where it's like major update, then major update, then major update, and major. So it's like, you know, a 1-2, like you have a really big update and then like a big update, really big. And this seems to be on the lower end of the scale, but the most recent update prior to this, Red Skies, it saw a huge advancement in technology in game, especially when it comes to aircraft. However, it did not really see a ton of aircraft. I think that's pretty good for the game because Gaijin is now, War Thunder is now sufficiently large and has sufficiently many vehicles where they can focus on, hey, this game needs to be improved. And I think that they're really doing that. They're releasing a lot more, many more improvements, including armor fixes, flight model fixes, cockpits. People really like that. They're really getting more into immersion. And this is something I talked about a year ago. Many YouTubers have, many people in forums have. Who am I kidding? I can't take the credit for that. It's just been really talked about for a long time amongst the community, and Gaijin seems to be finally delivering. So really good job, Gaijin. And this is a continuation of that trend. So I'm really, really happy about that. Third, we have, again, this is all part of the good. Third, we have a focus on smaller tech trees and lesser played types of vehicles. So we're getting the Shackleton. Now, I mentioned that will be blown out of the sky in an instant, and that is true. It is a relatively high BR vehicle, and it will be facing vehicles that can just annihilate it. Plus, it has a huge weak spot on the, if I'm not mistaken, the underside of the rear of the the bomber itself, which is the spot where people are going to come up to attack it. So I don't really know how effective it's going to be, but I like that Gaijin is adding it. It's a really cool looking plane. So really, we need more bombers in game. I'm looking for more like, bombers, like especially 50s bombers, like light bombers, supersonic bombers, 60s bombers. I feel like those would be excellent additions to the game, but the Shackleton is definitely a cool addition. Won't be too useful, but it's a cool addition. And also, again, other countries as well. We have Japan getting some vehicles, actually a lot of ground vehicles. And again, they're kind of a medium-sized country. Sweden's getting 3 vehicles, which is really, really cool. I think Sweden now with the JA-30 or 37C, especially now that it has countermeasures, it has the potential to be easily the most powerful vehicle in all of War Thunder. So really, really good job there. I mean, the only thing it can't do is ground attack, but against air, it might be the best one in War Thunder, at least as of right now. After this, we have, again, tons of vehicles that are being updated. I love that. I already mentioned that, but really there's a huge emphasis, and I encourage you to look at the patch notes on improving armor models, and you see it a lot when it comes to volumetric armor being added to a lot of late World War II German heavy tanks and TDs. I will wait until this actually happens because I do not know how this is going to affect their BRs, their gameplay, whatever else, but it is definitely going to change a lot about high 6.0 BR German vehicles, especially the Jagdtiger and the Tiger H. Now, beyond this, we also have Naval, which is being expanded upon, which I love. The larger ship models are just visually stunning. I encourage you to look at them in depth, preview them, and just zoom in because they really put a ton of work into it. And even though Naval is not the most played mode right now, it is still a work in progress. And Gaijin, even if their economy situation for Naval isn't perfect, you could tell that they're really starting to put things together for us. So good job on that, Gaijin. Now, insofar as the neutral is concerned, so like kind of the it could go either way sort of thing, it's the new tech in game, and this is allowing for greater options for people in matches, which sounds cool, but being that we now have laser guidance, I expect anti-radiation AGMs to be in game soon, which I personally think would be great for War Thunder. The major downside, however, might be that it could negatively impact ground matches. So I'm not talking about anti-radiation missiles, but really laser guided ordnance and just other more advanced tracking systems attached to various pieces of ordnance hitting the ground. So this could negatively impact ground matches as better and better aircraft are making it more and more difficult for tanks to be tanks and for you to really play ground. So either SPAA are going to have to step up, or we're going to see this takeover of aircraft, whereas right now it's pretty heavily favored towards aircraft. I mean, you get killed from like 3 kilometers away from the air pretty often, whether it's helicopters or maybe an A-7D or a G91 or whatever the case may be. But once we get into, let's say, tornado territory or F-14 territory or something like that, where it's about that level of advancement, or even like base model F-16 territory, we are going to possibly see where ground battles in top tier are either unplayable or Gaijin is going to have to severely limit how aircraft interact with tanks by either limiting their ordnance choices or possibly just cutting off some vehicles entirely from being played against ground vehicles. So we'll see what happens. Now, insofar as the bad is concerned, there's only a few things here, but I feel like they're pretty important. So number one, I think that there's a possible artificial nerfing of stats to fit what Gaijin feels might be acceptable in game. So I did some research. I've been having a tough time finding primary sources for this, but everything seems to indicate that the JA-37C should have a 2232 kilometer per hour top speed. In game, it's sitting just under 2,000 kilometers per hour in realistic. And I've done the math. I actually have a video about this. It should be released by now. But basically, I think it was just a calculation error by some Gaijin or some modeling employee or whatever. However, if this is intentional and they're starting to reduce stats to make vehicles lesser, just so that maybe they can fit in a current meta or fit in the game and they won't be like overpowered, I think that's pretty harmful, but we will see what happens. But that could be happening here. Second, it looks like a larger and larger percentage of vehicles in each patch are premium. The last patch, I think it was 7 out of the 29 vehicles were premium. So it's a lot of vehicles. 7 or BR9 actually, and that is a huge percentage. I mean, you're looking at basically just about 25 to almost 30% or to about 30%, yeah, of all the vehicles in a single patch are premium, which I do not think is it's not a great way forward. But of course, that's also what's going to happen once you start filling up these tech trees so much where it becomes impossible to grind through them. I was lucky enough to get my start like 8 years ago when there were far fewer vehicles in the game. And once I got to like BR8, BR9, I could just kind of go back and fill in all the various vehicles. But for new players, all these new vehicles make it very difficult. So Gaijin's adding a bunch of premiums, which then makes it look really cool. But really, it's just premiums are becoming a larger and larger proportion of each patch, which I am not a big fan of. And finally, for the bad, I think that this one's probably mostly affecting people who really love history. And it's that Gaijin seems to be getting away from adding World War II vehicles, meaning that we are seeing the BV-138 as the only World War II plane coming to the game. Which is something I thought I'd never say. The Shackleton was added, that's actually a post-war vehicle with its first flight, I believe, in 1949. So the meat of each nation's tech trees is still basically going to be World War II era vehicles. And there are still plenty of gaps that I feel like could be filled with, again, World War II era vehicles. Now, I'll be making a video on that in the coming few weeks, but in short, Gaijin seems to be in a mad rush to get to more and more modern vehicles, especially with planes, that they're actually forgetting that most people only have access to and will only ever have access to World War II vehicles, because the majority of players do not get to top tier, so they don't get to experience those big, really cool vehicles like the JA-37C. Unless you buy yourself a premium, your access to top tier is extremely limited for most people. And I personally think that not adding more World War II vehicles is kind of a shame. And oftentimes what they're doing is, instead of just adding World War II vehicles in the regular tech tree as maybe as being bunched up with other World War II vehicles, for example. Like, I love what they did with the Yabo for the ME-262. They put that in the same exact portion of the tech tree, so you could decide to research the Yabo if you wanted it, or just leave it alone. But they're adding a lot of World War II or just hardly post-World War II vehicles as premiums, which is really disappointing. Also, at the ME-262 HG1 Gaijin, you know it's the right thing to do. Just do it. I'm going to make a video about this. You have to do it. Please do it. Anyways, that being said, there's a lot of really cool things coming to this patch, but I also think that a lot of things are pointing towards, in my opinion, troubling trends for the future. Again, such as really just kind of turning their back on the past. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I really want to know. This is a much longer video than I expected, as are most videos where I say it will be a somewhat quick video. So please like, comment, subscribe. You know the dealio. But that being said, thanks again for watching, everyone, and I will see you all on the other side. Take care, everyone.